you want to click the start button and type resolution, R-E-S-O at least, and look for a change the screen resolution option on your start menu. You'll come to something that looks like this depending on what version of Windows you're using. But the important thing is that you use the recommended resolution for any monitor. So on this first monitor on the left, the recommended resolution is 3840 by 1024, so that's what I would select. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but they told me 1280 by 720 for my course. That's true, but that's your dimensions of your video you're producing. For recording, you always want to go with the recommended settings. Now if you have two or more monitors, like in this example, then you want to set them both to whatever the recommended resolution is. And they won't be the same, and that's fine. You're probably only going to record off one of the screens anyway. And when you're done, just click apply. I don't have to do anything because I was already set there. And just click apply and follow the instructions on your screen. Now the reason mine looks kind of unusual is because I have this sort of thing going on where the big wide monitor on the left is actually three monitors together, sort of configured to act like one big monitor, and then a normal monitor on the right. But that has nothing to do with what we're doing here. I just record off the monitor on the right, and you too can of course just record off one monitor. The second thing you may want to do is enlarge your mouse pointer a little, because remember, people looking at these recordings might be looking at a much smaller screen, so your mouse pointer could be hard for them to see. If you click start and type mouse, then look for some kind of mouse properties or mouse settings dialog box. In Windows 10, you'll come to this kind of a thing, and then you can click additional mouse options, and eventually you'll get to this mouse properties dialog box, which is what we really care about here. On the pointers tab here, you want to pick a nice large mouse pointer size, like one of the extra larges. I usually go with this magnified system scheme because it's big and it's got a nice dark outline. It's real easy to see. And over on pointer options, there's nothing really terribly relevant, but if you want to show pointer trails, you should probably keep them kind of short, because otherwise when you do freeze frames and stuff, which we'll talk about later, you end up with a lot of mouse pointers on the screen. It doesn't look right. Just leaving it off unchecked is probably your best bet. And then just click OK to close the dialog box, and if you have this other settings thing still open, you can close that too. Alrighty, next we'll talk about getting your microphone ready, just in case you're going to do any narration or voiceovers or whatever. And in Windows, you typically do that by clicking the start button, type sound, and look for sound control panel. Okay, and when you get there, it'll look something like this. On the playback tab, you tell it where you want the sound to come from, coming out. And if it's not already selected with the green check marks, select the one you want and click set default. The recording tab is the main one we're concerned about here, and that should be set to whatever you're going to use for your actual voice recording. And if it doesn't show that green check mark, click it and then click set default. And then you can click OK to close that dialog box. And lastly, it's not a bad idea to get your folders together for the course you're creating. What I usually do is I'll create a folder for the course itself. Alright, so this would be C9 Quick Start. The underscore puts it at the top of the list in alphabetical order. And then within that course folder, I have a subfolder for each lesson. And I number them and title them like the lesson title. And then within each of those lesson files, I have three files I put in there in advance. One is the opening thing you see at the beginning of each lesson. One is this Blackboard thing I use for titles as we go from one section to next in the lesson, and then my universal ending I put at the end of each lesson, and I put those in there in advance so that when I get there working on that lesson, those are already there. It's all squared away. I don't have to think about them anymore. Again, this is just an organizational thing, certainly not a technical requirement, but something to think about, because it's kind of a big deal making a course, so the more organized you are up front, the better. All right? Now, the next lesson we're going to talk about actually recording the screen. Hey, it's Alan. Welcome back. All right, in this lecture, we're going to talk about recording the screen. Now, you could just click Start and find the Camtasia Recorder button and start recording. But if you start doing stuff like that, you end up with recordings all over the place. It could get kind of messy and complicated, and you end up spending more time looking for stuff than you do actually creating stuff. So I'm going to talk about an organized way to go about it, which should help all your work go a little faster and easier. So rather than go straight for the recording, go ahead and open Camtasia 9, which is the one with the green icon. That's going to present you with some options. If you're making a course, think of each lesson as a project. So in Skillshare, each lesson might be 2 to 5 minutes, maybe a little longer. Okay, so each of those would be a project. In Udemy, maybe a little longer, maybe up to 10 minutes. You can go to 20 minutes on those. But whatever it is, each lesson would basically be a project. So if you're just getting started on a lesson, you should probably start by clicking New Project and creating a project for that lesson. So let's say I'm just getting started on Lesson 3 now. Now remember, I already created folders for my lessons, and I put some stock footage in each of those. So first thing I'm going to do is click this Import Media, go to the folder for Lesson 3 and import the stock footage I put in all my lessons. Okay, now I'm going to click File, Save, and this will be Lesson 3. Again, I'm going to put it in the Lesson 3 folder, and I'll call it 03 lesson, or you can use the title, whatever works for you. All right, so this is going to be a project, and basically what it's going to be is all the video, narration, photos, whatever you have that make up one lesson. Okay, and I'll click OK. Now, why do that first if you're just going to record the screen? And the reason why is now if I click record, anything I record is going to go into that folder and into that lesson. So it's pre-organized for me. I don't have to go looking around for the stuff later. So now to start recording from here, I just click record. That'll minimize the Camtasia window and ask me some questions about how I want to do the recording. If you have to shoot the whole screen, then you have to shoot the whole screen, and that would be full screen. Now if your dimensions are huge compared to 1280 by 720, then everything's going to be real tiny and hard for people to see, and you're also going to have a lot of empty space left over on the screen. The only way to deal with that would be to then zoom in on the part you really want to show, like this. The second choice is to shoot it at the dimensions you'll be showing it, which on the internet is pretty universally 720 HD or 1280 by 720. Now if you choose that and your own screen dimensions are larger than that, you'll see a green bordered box indicating how much is going to be recorded, and you can drag it around by the symbol in the middle to position it to the whatever section of the screen you want to record, and then take your subject matter, maybe it's a specific app like Excel here, and size it to that window, and then you'll know that you're recording only inside that area, and you can see it's a much better fit than when we had the whole screen in there and everything looked so tiny you needed a microscope to see it. A couple other options on this camera on-off thing. If you set that on, it'll record whatever's being fed into your webcam and put that on the screen. If you want to record audio, you can choose your microphone for this one. You can also record system sounds, that is the beeps and things coming out of your computer. Or you don't have to record any audio. That's what I usually do, and then I do the voiceover later. It's entirely up to you, but I will show you how to do the voiceover later as one way to do it. All right, and then when you're ready to record, just click record or press F9. Then you'll get this little countdown timer, 3, 2, 1, and when it gets down to 0, you know you're recording. And then just do whatever it is you want to do to show your students. For my little hypothetical example here, I'll do a sway slideshow or something. Pretend I'm teaching a course in that. But don't worry about what's going on there, though. This is just an example of recording. It doesn't matter what you're recording. One thing you want to keep in mind, though, is that if you make a mistake, you don't really have to start over. A lot of times people will try to do like a whole 10 or 15 minute, even longer video in one sitting where they're narrating as they go along. And they find that it's almost impossible, so they compromise and just publish it with a bunch of mistakes in there. You can get away with it. People are used to that from seeing YouTube videos and such, but if you're looking for a little more professional quality or working for a publisher who demands a little more professional quality, you can just record the video alone and then go back and do your voiceover later. It's probably easier than trying to do it all in one fell swoop because, like I said, you can knock out the junk and just keep the good stuff and then narrate that. Okay, and then just keep recording, doing whatever you want to do. And when you're done recording, and again, it doesn't have to be the whole lesson. If you want to do a few minutes at a time, that's fine. You can piece it all together too. But click stop up here or press F10 when you're done recording. And that will bring open Camtasia 9, and your recorded video will be there in your media bin where all your other stuff is. And if you drag it down to the timeline like that, it's now part of your movie. You'd be wise to save the whole project too at that moment. Just click File and choose Save. So now all the stuff that's in the media bin is saved as part of the project. You want to get to know the media bin pretty well. Now if you don't see it, it could be because something else is selected over here. See, as I go from item to item, it changes. Media bin is the one on the top. In fact, if I widen this, then you can see its name, media bin. All right, when you click that, that's what takes you to the media bin. Now, all your clips will be in there. Notice that there's this library. If you go there, these are predefined clips you get with Camtasia. That's something separate from your media bin. Your media bin is the stuff you made, the photos, the videos, and so forth. To add to your media bin, you can click the plus sign down here, and then you can add, video you shot with your iPhone, or photographs, or stuff you got from public domain sites. And then these two items just let you change your view of the icons in the media bin, just two of them. Okay? Now you can also, in this view, you see how you can do some sorting and so forth too with these column headings. I'm showing date and name. Okay? Just a little thing to be aware of because you do use the media bin a lot. If you want to record some more video for this lesson, just click record again and do exactly like you did last time. In other words, click that record, then click record here in this recording box, and then when the countdown finishes, you're recording again, and just record whatever it is you want to record on the screen. I'll just do some fake stuff here and sway again. It doesn't matter what you're recording, like I said. I'll just record some stuff. Okay, and then when you're done recording, once again, you can press the F10 key or click the stop button in that recording box, and that thing you just recorded is now represented by a little icon here in the media bin, and it's part of this project because you started recording from this project. And a project, again, is basically all the video, all the audio, any photos, whatever you have in there that make up one lesson in your course. And really, I can't overstress how important it is to be organized because there's a lot of files that make up a course, and you don't want to spend all your time looking around for files. So if you're starting a new lesson, start off with a new project. If you're adding to an existing project, open that project first, then do your screen recording, and that will ensure that that screen recording ends up in the media bin for that project. Just make sure you click the record button in the top of Camtasia so that you're linking that recording to that particular project. Video you recorded on your screen like you learned in the last lesson, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be any video, something you shot with your iPhone or a camera, or something you downloaded from a service online, whatever. Video is video. Okay? And also we'll talk about how you can use still pictures in there, and those can be pictures you took yourself or public domain photos or whatever you like to use. All right. So your first step will be to open up the project that you're working on if it isn't already open, and then go to your media bin. So you want to click media near the top left and then media bin. Anything you previously imported or recorded while that was open should be in there. I'll be using these kind of generic videos for our working example, but video is video. These skills apply whether you're editing video from a screen recording or from a camera or something you downloaded, whatever. All right? If there's something you intend to use in your lesson or project that you're working on that isn't in the media bin yet, you should import. And to do that, just click this plus sign button down here in the lower left corner of the media bin and choose Import Media. Now you can navigate to the folder that contains the file or files you want to import and import them. This talking head MP4 is a make-believe talking head video. I have to use a fake one because if I use a real one, it's going to be talking and I'm going to be talking. It'll be too confusing. So that's just my generic talking head video. And then which.png is just a graphic image. Okay, it could be any photo. Like I said, it could be something you took with your camera. It doesn't matter. These are just two sample files I'm importing, and it's pretty much the same for any other files you want to import. So then just select the file or files that you want to import and click open, and copies will come into your media bin, and you can use those in your movie however you like. Now to add a clip to your movie, just drag it down to the timeline along the bottom. Anything you put in the timeline will appear in your finished product, and it always plays from left to right, so whatever shows first goes on the left. Whatever shows next goes next to that, and so forth. Now before you go any further, you want to check your settings, because if you do all this at the wrong settings and submit your course and it gets rejected, you're going to be bummed out because you're going to have to go back and redo everything. So what you want to do here is click this drop down and then choose Project Settings. Now assuming this video is going to go online, it's probably going to be 720p HD 1280 by 720. Now if you have some good reason to use some other setting, that's fine, but if in doubt, you should just go with the 720p and always use that for anything you're going to be publishing online. Now this background color here is the background color of the square that shows the visible area. In fact, I'm going to make it a bright yellow and show you. Okay, now there's no bright yellow because this video is completely covered, but now with this here, is this yellow? This is the whole area that people watching my movie are going to see. They'll see everything inside of that and nothing outside of that. Now I can change the magnification level for my own eyes at this level, like it fit. It kind of just fits itself to fit in there. But that doesn't impact how my students are going to see things. They're still going to see everything that's inside that square and nothing outside that square. So if I go down to 25%, or if I go say fit, or if I go 2000%, I'm in really tight. Now that's entirely optional. If you just want to choose fit and leave it at that, that's fine. Either way, it's not going to affect how your students see the movie. All right, now when you want to play it, that is preview it to see what they'll see, you want to drag the playhead to the beginning of the timeline and then click play. And you'll see that as it plays along the timeline, that canvas up there shows what they'll be seeing. Let me add another clip here. Like, let's say I'm going to do the talking head after my intro. Okay? See that? Okay, now, so let me play the whole thing again. Well, wait a minute. Let me just show you a quick trick here. That abrupt change from one scene to the next can be kind of annoying. So one thing you can do is click transitions here and see that fade. If you drag that down to right where the clips meet, that will make a fade transition where it fades gently from one to the other, which is much easier on the eyes. Now note that I can change the magnification of the timeline. That doesn't affect how people see the movie. It's going to look the same to them either way, but it allows me to zoom in on time and see things in more detail or less detail. Here I'm in great detail. Okay, and the green bar between those two things just represents a fade transition. And again, that magnification is strictly for your eyes. It doesn't have any impact on how things will look in your finished movie to your students. All right, let's play this now. As the playhead moves along the timeline showing the movie, the preview area or canvas up there shows what that part of the movie looks like. The play button changes to a pause button, which you can click to stop playback. And you can actually move through the video one frame at a time using these two buttons to the left of play. And that's real handy when you need to zero in on a specific place in the video where you need to make a cut because you got some bad stuff coming up you want to get rid of. Okay, once you get the playhead right at the spot where you want to start getting rid of stuff, you can split it there either by typing the letter S or by clicking this little split icon just above the playhead, and the video will actually split into two parts right at that spot. You can click one side or the other to see that it is indeed two separate clips now. Now I could just delete that whole chunk to the right and that would take it out of the movie, but let's say maybe there's something at the end of this clip or somewhere else, there's something else in this clip I want to keep, and just, it doesn't matter where it is, let's just say, pretend it's right here, okay? I decide I want to keep after that point. Next I have to select the clip, and that's easy enough to do, just click it. You can tell it's selected when it shows that yellowish gold border around it. I need to click that so that my next action applies to that selected clip. And the next action I'm going to take is I'm going to click split again. I'm going to split it right there at the playhead. Now when I click in the middle, you can see this middle clip is now selected, and the stuff to its left and right is not selected. So this part in between the two splits is its own little clip now, and say I don't want it in my movie, simple enough, I can just press the delete key and delete it. So now it's out of my movie like it never happened. But I have this big gap of time here between the two clips. You can't leave that in there because that's just going to look like nothing to your audience, and your audience won't sit through nothing. But it's very easily fixed. Just drag the piece that's off to the far right to the left till it's right up snug against the other one, and then there's no more time gap. And that, my friend, is how movies are made and have always been made. It's just that in the olden days, they used film and splicing tools and glue to cut pieces out and glue them back together. These days, we don't use film. We just use video and computers to do exactly the same thing. We cut out the parts we don't want and splice together the remaining pieces. And in Camtasia, it's always the same series of steps. Get the playhead to where you want to make a split, okay, and then you have two separate things, and then move the playhead to where maybe you want to resume keeping stuff, so you make another split. Now you have three pieces. The piece in the middle you can delete and then just drag them together, and it's like that piece never existed. So goodbye embarrassing moment. Now what if I want to put in a photo? In fact, I want to put it between these two clips. How in the world am I going to pull that off? Well, first of all, go out to the media bin and make sure the photo's in there. If it's not, you'll have to import it. I'll just use my witch here, okay? Now, if I want to put her in between those, I'm going to have to move them apart so there's room in between them. I'll just click the one on the right and then drag it to the right so there's a big gap there in between the two clips. Then I'll drag the witch down so she's in between those two clips. Now you might think, yeah, but this is a still photo. How long is it going to show for? An eye blink? A minute? An hour? How do I know? Well, the width of the photo tells you how long it's going to play for, because remember, that's time going across the top. Though you don't have to eyeball it like that. If you right-click the photo and choose duration, then you'll see what the duration is, and you can also change it. By default, it's 5 seconds, as you can see here. Now maybe for whatever reason I decide I only want it to show for 3 seconds, I can change it and click OK. And that'll be the duration. Now I have a big time gap again, and that's bad. You can't have time gaps, but it's an easy fix. Just drag this last bit of video over to the left so it's up snug against the photo, and then there are no gaps. And now our movie consists of these clips you see here with no gaps. And that's pretty much how all video editing is done. You arrange clips along the timeline left to right in the order you want them to play, and a clip can be a photo or video, and make sure you don't have any gaps in between them. Okay, there are a few more good things to know I'd like to point out before we leave this lesson. One is about the edit menu, which you see on the menu bar there. When you click it, the edit menu drops down. Alright, now down near the bottom of that menu is this jump to section. That gives you options and shows some shortcut keys for making rapid moves through the timeline. For example, choosing jump to beginning or pressing Control Home will move the playhead to the beginning of the timeline. Choosing jump to end or pressing Control End will jump the playhead to the end of the timeline. Also, if you have multiple clips in the timeline, you can use these next and previous buttons to the right of play to jump from one clip to the next, or one media to the next, as they sometimes say in Camtasia. And finally, I want to point out one potential gotcha that, if you're not aware of, can drive you a little bit crazy. Let's say you get the playhead right to where you want to make a split, okay, and you go to the split button, but it's disabled and clicking it has no effect. You try the shortcut key, the letter S, still no split. So you go to the edit menu, and you notice on that menu that there's a split and it's disabled, so that means you can't use it. There's a split all, though, that's enabled. What's the difference? Well, with split all, if you have multiple tracks stacked up one atop the other like this, we'll talk about why you might want to do that later. Then when you choose split all the clips that are underneath the playhead there are going to get split right where the playhead is. But if there's only one clip down there, then that one clip will get split. And so in that sense, it's the same as just doing a regular split. But it still kind of begs the question, well, why was it disabled in the first place? Why can't I just move the playhead to where I want to make a split and split? Well, you can, but if you want to use split or the shortcut key, you have to select the clip that you want to split. And that means you have to click on it, and you'll know it's selected when it shows this yellowish gold frame. Okay, so now when it's selected, then you can use the split button down there or the shortcut key or edit split on the menu. Okay, so as long as nothing's selected in the timeline, then those little shortcut buttons there pretty much all disabled, not undo. Okay, but if as soon as I click on a clip to select it, then they become enabled because now it knows which clip in the timeline I'm referring to. And that will be the selected clip, the one that's showing the yellow border. Now all these kinds of things are part of the project, okay, which is the thing in the timeline. So anytime you finish doing some of these things, you want to make sure you save by choosing File Save, so all that work is saved for future use. Okay, sound good? Make sense? If you have any questions, just ask. I'll also provide a link to another video that covers a lot of the same material, just because often it helps to see the same thing explained twice in two different ways. Thanks again for hanging in there with me. Now I'll see you in the next lesson where we'll talk about narration, or in other words, adding your spoken voice to your voiceover to your video. Now let's say you started out by having some kind of a predefined title. Now let me make these a little bigger so you can see what's going on better. I can use this to make the tracks taller and this to make them a little wider. Okay, so now this first clip here is just a intro thing, and you see those bars there, those indicate music that I already put in that track. And then this next one's a talking head thing I taped with my iPhone, and so that already has some video in it. Then over to the right here I have this screen recording, which I didn't use any voice while I was recording it, so it has no sound at all. And I did that on purpose because that's just the way I work. It's easier for me to record the screen and just think about what I'm showing, then come back later and think about what I want to say about it, all right? So there's some screen recording there with no sound in it. So the first thing I have to do is move the playhead to where I want to start the narration, because when I start talking, it's going to record my voice and move along to the right of that. So right here's where I want to start my narration, so that's where I put the playhead. And now to do the actual narration, click voice narration on the left there, and then go to the top and make sure the right microphone is selected. Make sure your microphone is hooked up and ready to go. Okay, and then I'm going to use my Yeti, so that has to be selected. Now you can turn on this auto leveling thing. What that does is it sets the recording level automatically to the situation, and when that's showing green, that means it's on. And you can also mute the timeline during recording, and that prevents the speakers in your computer from making any sound that would then come around and come right back into your recording. Okay, now when you're ready to go, just click Start Voice Recording and start talking. The video will play over to the right as you're talking so you can see what you're narrating. Now if you mess up, which I do about 1,000 times a day, you can click cancel or stop down at the bottom. If you click stop, just click cancel on the second box to choose yes, and it's like you never even recorded. Then check to make sure the playhead's exactly where you want to start narrating. Click start voice recording again and try again. You can record for as long or as short a time as you want, 5 seconds, a minute, 5 minutes, whatever works for you. And when you're happy with your recording or you've messed up, you can click stop. And then if it's a keeper, just choose the folder for the lesson you're working on so that all those files are together, and give it a file name. I usually just number them like 01, 02, 03. The file is saved and is added to the media bin, and it also shows in the timeline with its left edge right where you started recording, and you can see the little bit of sound waves at the bottom there. This one's a little weak. We'll talk about how we can make it louder in a bit, but basically this is how a voice narration is done, and now you can just keep doing it until you've narrated the whole lesson. And again, you don't have to do it in one big chunk. You can just keep putting in little chunks like this. Now once in a while, or if you're like me, a lot in a while, you're going to come to a situation where you want to say something, but you recorded over it so fast you don't really have time to say anything. So what you need to do is stop the action in the video. You kind of freeze frame it, so that you have a minute to talk about that, and then it can resume. So let's talk about how you do that. First, you have to get the playhead to right where you want to do the freeze frame. You can kind of ballpark it by dragging it into position, then use those next frame and previous frame buttons to get right to where you want to stop the action. Then you want to right-click that exact spot on the timeline and choose Extend Frame. Then it's going to ask you for how long. Now you're not going to know if it's, well, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, but if you just set it to like something ridiculous, like 60 seconds if you think you need 6, then so what if it's too long? It's like a board or a piece of cloth. If it's too long, it's easy to cut it shorter. But if it's too short, it's a little harder to cut it longer. So just go ahead and extend that frame way out so you don't have to worry about it, and give yourself plenty of time. And then click OK. And it'll get real wide down in the timeline. And basically that width is how long you have to talk. But again, you don't have to fill that time. Talk for as long as you want and then trim to your voice. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I get the timeline to where I want to start my narration, same as before. Click Start Voice Recording, same as before. Say whatever it is I need to say. And when I'm done, I'll click Stop. And if it's good, I'll save it. Now I extended the frame out to over a minute, but I only spoke for a few seconds. So now I got to get rid of some of that extra slack of that whole minute. So basically I have to delete everything from where I finished talking to the end of the extension. Now the end of the extension is indicated by this stitch looking symbol. Okay, so if I put the playhead there and select and then hit split, it'll split right there at the stitchy thing, and then I'll go right to where I finished talking roughly. Click there and split. Okay, and I'll just click that chunk and delete it out of there and stitch it back together, and now it's a nice smooth transition. It's going along. It freeze frames for a minute. It gives me or for a few seconds, giving me time to talk about something, and then it just picks up where it left off. Okay, and to the person watching it, it looks smooth. They're not aware that all this editing's going on. It looks like I just have pretty good timing. But we're not completely out of the woods yet, because you might have noticed some of these audio things have real tall spikes in them, and some of them have very tiny little spikes in them, meaning the volumes are all different. And that's going to be annoying to people listening to this, so we need to try to even some of that out. Let me show you how we do that. First, you want to select all the audio clips by dragging the mouse pointer through them, or you can just click in the timeline and press Control-A and select everything in the timeline, because this is only going to affect clips that have sound in them. So now the clips that have the orange borders are selected, and what I can do is then apply volume leveling and other things to these selected clips. All right, so the way we do that is choose Audio Effects from the left pane here. You might have to click More. Okay, there's the audio effects. And now you see what your different options are. Right now our main concern is volume leveling. If you want to apply it to everything though, you got to hold down the Shift key, then drag volume leveling down to any one of the selected clips. Now when you release the Shift key and mouse button, it will be applied to all the selected clips. And now you can see the volumes look a little more even, but they may not be perfect. If you need to make some fine adjustments, you can just go into any one of them, drag the top of that green bar up or down to make it louder or quieter. For example, this one looks pretty good, but this one looks a little low still, so I might drag that up to make it a little louder, and maybe this one drag it down a little quieter. And you can just kind of wing it here and listen. I don't have any magic formula for that part of it. Now let's say I also have a problem where this narration has a lot of background noise. Again, I could select both of those, hold down the Shift key, and drag that down, and now that adds a noise removal effect to that, and you can click the little button at the bottom to see what all's applied, and when that's selected you can then even adjust that. Okay, so that's how you can apply noise removal to get rid of extraneous background noise. So that in a nutshell is how narration works. If you're following along doing your own, don't forget to save your work. You want to save your work often, of course, so you don't lose anything. And now in the next lesson we're going to talk about titles and callouts, which are tools that allow you to draw your students' attention to specific things on the screen, or to back up what you're saying with words on the screen. All right, I'll see you over there. Fun with titles and callouts. We'll need a little working example. In fact, what I'll do is I'll use the opening for this particular course, which starts out as this cover picture with the course title and logo and me on there, and then it fades to a blackboard. And it's on that blackboard that I put the title of the particular lesson we're on right now. Okay, so to do that, the first thing I have to do is get the playhead to right where I want the title to begin, which will be right after that little pink opening fades out, like right there. And I need to come up here and click annotations, because titles and callouts are annotations, and there are different categories of them. These are callouts with like speech bubbles. These are plain arrows. These are shapes you can put on there. These are effects like highlight and blur. And then we have the squiggly line thing is the arrows that are kind of hand drawn on there. And then you can actually put shortcut keys on there too. All right, but what we need is a title. So I'm going to come to this first one. Now you'll notice that I can use this drop down to look at different kinds of callouts, different styles basically. Now for this working example, I just need a real basic text callout. So I would probably go over to the callouts here and just drag this down. It's just a box of text, and you can see it shows up on the blackboard. In front of the blackboard is ABC initially. Okay, so now it's going to go from that to that title, and then it will end just before that talking head guy. All right, so first I got to change the text here, so I'm going to double click that and type the text I want to use for my title. Okay, and then I can select all that text by pressing Control A or dragging the mouse pointer through it, and then choose a font and a size. Okay, and a color over there to the right. I can tilt it a little bit, so that'll be my title. All right, so it comes in a little abrupt and runs a little long, so I'll shorten it a little bit here just by dragging that edge to the left. Okay, so it comes in, it shows, it's a little abrupt, so I'm going to click transitions here. I'm going to drag a fade transition down. All right, now when I play it, it will fade in the title, fade out the title, and then go on to the next clip. And that's perfect. That's all I need for that. Now let's say, suppose in this commercial I'm showing, I want to call attention to the actress driving the big old Chevy because she's my long-lost Aunt Matilda, and I want everyone to know it, so I want to put a call out on her there. So the first step is always to move the playhead to where you want to start the call out, just as it is with the title. Okay, so let's say I want to start it about there. I'm going to hit annotations in the squiggly line, and I'll drag one of these circle things down. Okay, so you see it on the timeline there now? When I come in, let me move it back a little. When I play from right here, you can see the circle gets drawn. It's not exactly where I want it, so I'll change the shape by dragging the edges a little bit. Okay, when I play from there, she comes on and the circle gets drawn, and so it goes. Now, if I want to extend how long the circle shows, I can just drag that item wider and it will play right up until she fades out. Okay, so in comes my Aunt Matilda. I circle her face because I'm so proud, and then when that scene's over, the circle disappears along with it. And actually I could make it fade out like that. Okay, it doesn't need to fade in because it's drawn on the way in, but you can make it fade out. A little smoother transition to the next clip. Hey, no yawning, you. All right. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to talk about producing your movie, and that will end up being the MP4 video that you publish online to a school or YouTube or wherever you're putting this thing. All right? See you over there. Thanks a lot for hanging in. Once you're happy with what you have in your timeline, that is, you got all your video in there and any pictures, and you got any titles and narration, whatever you want in there, whatever you see when you play that, that's what's going to become your final movie. So whatever you want in your final movie is what you make happen along the timeline there. And when you're ready to create your movie, you click share, and then for most things it'll be local file because you want to create an MP4 file that you upload to an online school or YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, wherever you're uploading it. And then on this drop down, you can choose how you want to do it. Now, there's a lot of options. If you really don't know a lot about it, you can probably just start out by limiting yourself to MP4 only with 720p, MP4 only 1080p. Now, most likely for the internet, you're going to go with 720p, but you can actually make one of each so long as you give them different file names and try it out. 1080p would be ideal if you're going to present it in a room full of people with no internet involved and it was going to be on a huge screen. That can be a little much for the internet. So for the internet, you would probably go with MP4 only, 720p. Okay, and then you'll see a little written description about it, but don't worry about it if you're not really into this technical video stuff. Just click next, and now you can say what file name you want to give it. I usually go with the lesson number or something like that. This isn't a real lesson, so I'll call it OX lesson, but it might in real life be O1 lesson, O2, and so forth. And now as far as where to put it, I would probably put it in with all the rest of the files that make up that one lesson, but since this is kind of a fake, I'll just stick it out on the desktop. Now this organized produced files into subfolders. For some file types that makes sense because they produce several files, but for MP4 only, you're only going to get one file, an MP4 file, so whether or not you put it in a subfolder is entirely up to you. I usually don't select that. This show production results, if you select it, it just throws up a dialog box when the movie's been fully produced, telling you some facts about the video, which is fine. I actually usually do that. And then play video after production will just play it automatically. I usually don't do that. But these things really don't affect the overall quality or appearance of the movie, so just choose whatever's convenient for you. Okay, then just click finish and wait. Now yours probably won't go quite this fast. I had to speed it up so you wouldn't have to sit around and wait. But when it's done, you will get the production results thing, and it just has some facts about the video, nothing to be concerned about. And then you can click finish, and at that point you can actually close Camtasia, save your work if you haven't already done so. And then the MP4 file will be an icon, and you can double click it to play it, or you can upload it to whatever school you're teaching for, to YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, wherever. I mean, it's pretty universal. Okay, so that's your finished product, so you're basically done with one lesson at this point. Now coming over the next lesson in this course, and we'll wrap up what you've learned and talk about other resources you can explore to reinforce what you've learned here and expand on what you've learned. It's Alan, welcome back. All right, thanks for hanging in there with me this long. In this lesson, we're just going to wrap up what you've learned, kind of the view from 30,000 feet. And I'm also going to point out some gotchas, which are just things that might happen, you don't know why, and you don't really know what to do about it, and I'll show you how to fix those things right up. Now, in terms of a good way to approach a course, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and create a folder for the course, and then a folder for each lesson in your course, because each lesson is basically going to be a project. And then I'll usually put in any kind of stock footage that goes in every lesson, and maybe if I already have some talking head or photo, I'll stick that in there ahead of time too, so that by the time I get to that lesson, that stuff is already there. Then in Camtasia, when you're going to work on a lesson, if you haven't already done so, start a new project and then import the media from that folder for that lesson into that project. Okay, so if I'm doing lesson 8 now, I'd go to lesson 8's folder, and I would pull in all the files I already put in ahead of time for those, and now those are in the media bin for that lesson. Now I'd actually save the project at this point, which seems weird, like I didn't do much, so why save? But basically what you're doing is you're setting up a project, a Camtasia project for this lesson, and you're putting it in the same folder as the rest of the files for this lesson. So basically you're getting organized up front. And the more organized you are, the better, because it's a lot of files that make up a course. And if you know where they are, you're not going to spend a lot of time looking for them. You're going to spend more time actually producing your course. And then to actually create the video, you drag media clips down from the media bin down into the timeline at the bottom in the left to right order you want them to play in your finished movie or lesson. And then when you do your screen recording, just click record inside of Camtasia and do your screen recording, and then when you save it, it'll end up in the same folder and the same media bin as all the other files that make up that lesson, so everything is still well organized. To do the actual recording, click record, and the little record box that opens. When the countdown stops, go ahead and do whatever it is you want to record. When you're done recording, you can Click delete if it didn't go well and start over. Or if it did go well, you can press the F10 key or press the stop button in the recorder if you can see it, and then that clip will go into the media bin for that lesson. Alright, so there it is at the bottom of the media bin, and now to add it to my movie I just drag it down to the timeline where I want it to start playing. And remember, it's not necessary for every recording to be perfect, because if you make a mistake you can just keep going and then cut it out later. And the way you do that is in the timeline you get the playhead to where the start of the bad part and click split. Okay, and then go to the end of the bad part, and again you can fine tune with these buttons. Make sure you select the clip and then click split. Now you can isolate that part and you can just delete it if you don't want it, or if it's good but in a bad place you can move it someplace else. Okay, but I'll just delete it in this case. A good way to add a little professional polish easily is to add a fade transition between each of these clips, and an easy way to do that is to select all the clips either by dragging the mouse pointer through, or you can click down there and press Control A and then hold down the Shift key and drag a fade transition down and drop it on any one of those clips, and then it will be applied to all those clips, so there's a fade between each one. Now to add voice narration, you can move the timeline to where the voice is supposed to start, go to voice narration, make sure you have the right microphone selected, click start voice recording and start talking. Okay, now you'll be able to watch the video play over there to the right in the canvas area. Now if you mess up and you want to start over, you can click cancel and restart and try again. Eventually you'll get it right, and then you'll just want to hit stop. Save the file in the same folder as everything else for that particular lesson, again, so you're organized. Then click save to save it, and it'll be added to the media bin, and also it'll already be in the timeline to the right of the playhead position. For annotations, again, put the playhead to where you want it to appear, and then go into annotations and drag down whatever annotation you want to put there. Okay, and then you can come up here to the canvas and size and shape it to wherever you want it to be. I guess I'm going to put a circle around this guy's mouth. I'm not sure why, but it's basically the same procedure for any annotation. On these you can adjust the line thickness and the draw time as well. And then to test it out, just run the playhead through it and you'll see it get drawn in, and it'll end when the clip ends there. And finally, when you're happy with everything in the timeline, you can create your movie by clicking share and choosing local file. Choose your format, which is probably going to be MP4 only 720p if you're going online with it. Alright, and then the file name can be anything, but I usually match it to the lesson with the word final on the end, and of course put it in the same folder as all the other files that make up that lesson. Okay, and then when you're ready, click finish down below, and it'll create your movie, and that MP4 file then is what you will upload to Udemy or Facebook or YouTube or wherever you happen to be putting it. And then I'd like to close with just pointing out a few little gotchas that might kind of catch you off guard and wondering what you did wrong and what you're going to do to get things straight again. One common one is you think you're just moving the playhead by maybe clicking or dragging it along, and then oops, all of a sudden it splits into two pieces like that. What the heck is that? Well, that's not really a problem. I mean, you can just drag them back together and then drag from the middle, and that's solved. But in terms of why it's there, it's another way you can delete chunks of video. If I spread it out like that and click delete, okay, and then it takes out everything that was between those. Or if I click ripple delete, it actually takes everything out that was between those and stitches the two pieces up together, so I don't have to do that extra step of dragging the clips back together again. Another weird one is where you're just working in the timeline and all of a sudden these little quiz markers start showing up. Like, what the heck? What am I doing? What did I do wrong? And a lot of times that's because you accidentally turned on the quiz bar by pressing Control Q. And this is the quiz bar over here. All right, now it's checked, so that's why it's visible. Now, to get rid of it, first you can get rid of these things by right-clicking them and choosing delete. And then to get rid of the quiz bar so they stop showing up, you can click quiz over here on the left and click quiz again to clear that check mark, or press Control Q. and then that little quiz bar will disappear and you'll stop getting the little quiz markers as you click along that bar. And then once the quiz bar is gone, then you won't get those little quiz things as you click along the timeline there. If you accidentally press Control M and turn on the marker bar, then as you're clicking along the timeline, you might start seeing these markers. And they're placeholders for things you might want to do later, but if you're just learning, you're just kind of in the way. So again, you can right click